We here at Election Yard have just watched the Virginia gubernatorial debate on Thursday, October 9th. So you didn't have to. And if you missed it, you know what? It's like I hate telling people not to find footage of a political debate because you want voters to be informed and you want them to take something out of this. But I genuinely don't know if you will get anything constructive out of it in terms of policy. And there are a couple reasons why. So, of course, in Virginia, the two nominees for governor are Democrat Abigail Spanberger and Republican Winsome Earle-Sears. Spanberger, a former congresswoman, and Sears, the incumbent lieutenant governor. That was illuminating. Perhaps not in such good ways, but it was very illuminating. So, took some notes during the debate, but I don't need a notebook for this first one. Winsome Sears interrupted Abigail Spanberger every single time she spoke, including during Spanberger's closing. It was a very frustrating debate to watch, in part because of that, because Sears constantly interrupted Spanberger, tried to talk over her every single time, to the point where you couldn't hear what Spanberger was saying. So in Wavy 10 in Norfolk, they put this debate on. I don't know why they didn't just cut her mic, because you couldn't hear some of the context of what Spanberger was saying, because Sears just kept yapping over her every single time Spanberger spoke. And Sears, when she had her time, she threw a lot of barbs at Spanberger, which is kind of what I would have expected, considering she's down probably about 10 points in the polls, depending on who you ask. And usually the candidate that's behind needs to start chucking up some Hail Marys to try to win the game in the fourth quarter, which is where we are in this campaign at this point. But she threw a lot of barbs at Spanberger, and the difference between how Spanberger and Sears did is that every time Spanberger spoke, and even alluded to, or sometimes not even alluding to, something that Sears said or did, Sears piped up and said, well, you did this and you did that, whatever she was saying. It was every single time, like I said. But when Earle-Sears was speaking, Spanberger hardly flinched. And there were a number of times when Sears turned to Spanberger and say, Abigail, why did you do this? Abigail, why did you do that? How could you do this? How could you do that? She didn't even flinch. So I give Spanberger credit. She didn't take the bait because it was obvious that that's what that was, trying to bait her or get her into a gotcha moment. But Spanberger was very calm and very collected. I will give her that. The thing with Spanberger, she definitely had some questions she didn't answer. One of them was on the J. Jones situation. She was pushed a couple times, and I'll give the moderators credit for this part, that they did push her a few times on wanting to know if she was going to continue to endorse J. Jones or not. And Spanberger danced around it. She's in a tough situation with that. But then what happened was the moderators asked Sears about certain things that Donald Trump has said. It said, do you think that's okay? And then Sears tap danced around that too, and actually said a lot of the same things that Spanberger said about J. Jones. Like, for example, she said, Spanberger, we're all running individual races, which is true. The gubernatorial nominee, the lieutenant governor nominee, the attorney general nominee, they are running as a ticket in a sort of sense, but they all ran individual races. And it's not like a governor picks a running mate, or two running mates in this case. They are all running individual races. So Abigail Spanberger basically said, we're all running our own races, and I'm responsible for what I say and do. And then when Sears was asked about stuff Trump said, she said, I'm running my own race, and I'm responsible for what I say and do. So they both kind of were under the microscope a little bit there. And there was another time, for example, early on in the debate when they talked about getting rid of the quote-unquote hated car tax, which, being a Virginian, I can tell you everybody hates the car tax. It's one of these things that politicians talk about getting rid of every year, but they never actually do it. There was a question that was asked to Spanberger of, if you're going to eliminate the car tax, how would you recoup the $3 billion in revenue? And she didn't really answer that one either. So yes, there were definitely times when she was presented with questions and she did not directly answer them. But then you look at the other side, and there were probably people out there who thought that Winsome Earle-Sears did a good job in this debate tonight. I don't know why they would think that. Keep in mind, Winsome Earle-Sears, there was a question about marijuana tonight, and she said she believes in medicinal marijuana, but we can't have it, legal for everyone, because she had a business and people showing up baked out of their mind. They're not going to know what they're doing. Perhaps the people who think that she had a good debate performance are some of those very people that she think would be stumbling into work, stoned out of their gourds. She did terrible. I'm just going to say she did terrible. I knew she was going to be a little bit interesting to watch for sure, but she was just all over the place. It seemed like she had certain things in mind that she was going to say, and she just, rapid fire bazookaed them out, just whatever she felt like. Pivoted to whatever she wanted to pivot to, and every time Spanberger was speaking, she just talked over her. It was just extremely frustrating to watch that, even as someone doing it in this kind of, I guess you could say, a journalistic context, just trying to watch the debate and get a sense for who's doing well and who isn't, who's answering questions and who isn't. It was just extremely frustrating to watch because she could not let Spanberger get in a word edgewise. And I would be curious to see if there were any focus groups or people who watched the debate and what the verdict is after that. But I found Sears' performance to be very, very frustrating. And I'm not sure it's going to play particularly well with the voters. Speaking of things playing with the voters, of course. So the first question in this debate was actually about the car tax, getting rid of the car tax. And probably about 15 seconds into her answer, because Sears went first, she pivoted to Jay Jones, which, I actually thought the first question was going to be about the tax scandal. But, Sears made it work in that way, and that kind of just set the tone for the entire debate. There was another time when Sears made a gaffe. They were talking about solar and wind, about Spanberger's support of renewable energy in that way. She made a comment that, well, you know what? Look outside. The sun's not shining. The wind's not blowing. Then what? Then solar and wind are useless. And I think the fact that she doesn't understand how solar and wind work, that's definitely a little troublesome because these communities that have a lot of wind power, I mean, you go south of the Hampton Roads area, you go into North Carolina heading towards Elizabeth City, there's a whole lot of windmills down there. And there are lots of solar farms all around, both North Carolina, Virginia, everywhere there are solar farms. When the sun goes down and it's a calm wind day, whole neighborhoods don't just lose power. So it was just another one of those things. She's just kind of firing off stream of consciousness, whatever she wants to say. And frankly, I don't think she acquitted herself well. I think Spanberger certainly could have been better. I think Spanberger certainly could have been more direct on her answer to a number of questions. But if it was a competition of who looked more calm and steady, there's absolutely no debate. Every time that Sears turned to Spanberger and was basically wagging her finger, say, you did this, you did that, why? Spanberger just stood there stone-faced. Just didn't even turn her head. So she definitely, I think, and I could have seen this coming too. Spanberger went into this thinking, I am going to portray calmness and an even keel because I think she knew, who her opponent was and what the contrast would likely be. So I think once it became clear that Sears was going to be like interrupting, talking over constantly, and, lobbing this grenade and that grenade, I think Spanberger made sure that she remained level and that she didn't take the bait. And if that is what people take out of this debate, if it changes any minds at all in that way, I think the gubernatorial election is probably in the bag at this point. If you believe the polls that say that Spanberger was up by about 10 points, then I just really can't picture how we would come out of this debate with anything else but the status quo in the race. I certainly don't think Sears helped herself in the debate, and perhaps Spanberger didn't either, but if it was a choice of who did worse, I think the answer is pretty clear that it was Sears. And reminder, this is the only gubernatorial debate that they're going to have, and that's probably a good thing because I don't think I could sit through another hour of that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I had other things that I could have been doing tonight. It is a Thursday, but I had other things I could have been doing, and it got to be very frustrating to watch. But that's it. We are only a few weeks away now from the Virginia gubernatorial election. If you are interested in early voting in Virginia, early voting is open. So check with your local community, check with your independent city or your county for early voting locations. Check with the Virginia Department of Elections to check your voter registration. The registration deadline is coming up very soon. And for more on Election Yard, visit electionyard.com. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We're going to keep plugging away with this Virginia governor's race, and we'll see you soon.